Today, I am joined by my colleague, Pat Ivory, who is the Director of EU and International Affairs at Ibec. And welcome, Pat.
Good to see you, Jackie.
And so today we're going to talk about elections and trade and what's happening in the EU and definitely looking at why that matters for international and Irish business that are looking to do business or are already doing business in the EU. So this is an important year for elections in many countries around the world, certainly in the EU. Tell me a little bit about why that matters and what the big focus is for you from your perspective this year.
Well, 2024 is a critical year for Ireland and for Europe, and as you mentioned, for many other countries around the world who'll be engaging in elections. In an Irish and EU context, we're facing a really significant challenge in terms of putting competitiveness at the forefront. And the strength of the European economy and its ability to deliver for its people depends on the success of businesses large and small. And this will determine how we grow over the coming years and prosper and attract investment. But it also, very importantly, provides jobs, enhances living standards, and generates the resources necessary to have that healthy public sector and to invest in the infrastructure that we need in all our economies. From an Irish perspective, it's central. The EU is central to our future success. 93% of respondents to the latest Euro Barometer survey showed that Ireland has benefited from being an EU member, and 88% of respondents to the European Movement Ireland survey last year indicated that they were strongly supporting the EU. And that's really important, not only from a societal and civil point of view, but also from a business point of view. I mean, if you look at the EU, it's Ireland's most important trading partner. Takes account of 38.7% of our exports and over 30% of our imports. And it's followed then by the United States, which is about 30% of exports and 20% of imports. And then the UK, which is our nearest neighbour, which accounts for about 11% of our exports and 15.5% of our imports. So you can see from those kind of figures that the European Union and our relationship with the European Union is really very important. And that's why it's really vital that people get out and vote in the European Union elections, the European Parliament elections, which will take place in June. And there's real benefits to further development of the EU. We can possibly talk about that a little further.
Yeah, that's great, and you're so right. Ireland is an outward-looking global, relies on the global economy and the EU in particular, and then. Ireland also has a role to play in influencing what happens in the EU to strengthen not only the EU's competitiveness and then Ireland. So you and your team have been focused recently on putting together an EU election manifesto. And you've really captured everything quite succinctly and in very simple terms with 4 key points that you're looking to address over the course of our campaigning in the EU elections. You start out by talking about an EU that's focused on its strength and competitiveness. Maybe go into a little bit about what you mean by that and what are some of those core strengths that we should be focused on advancing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the core strengths of the European Union is its single market. And that is, the benefits and the potential of the single market are absolutely huge. It gives access to nearly 447 million consumers, and there's 23 million companies employing over 128 million people in the single market. So it's a really valuable asset at a European-wide basis. And access to it is estimated to be worth 30 billion to Ireland annually. And the benefits of further development of the single market could be up to 713 billion. So it's really by 2029, the next 5 years or so. So developing that single market is one of the key strengths and competitiveness, and it's very good in terms of how it has facilitated the movement of goods across the European Union. There's very few barriers to goods. A couple of things that need to be tweaked and changed to ensure that it's free moving as possible. But one area where there's great potential for development of the single market and to improve competitiveness is on the services side, and in particular on the digital side. We talk about digital transformation, and what we really need to look at now in terms of the development of the single market is how we can bring the benefits that have been experienced on the good side to be more apparent on the services side, on the digital side. And Ibec and Irish Business has been engaging with the European Commission in terms of, and the European Council in terms of the studies that are being done on the single market at the moment, and so that's one key area. I think a second area of strength and potential for the development is in the capital markets union and banking union area, and that's like really developing that on a single market basis and introducing more access to finance, in particular for SMEs to have a proper functioning capital markets here in Europe, so that in addition to the debt and loan, that there's more emphasis also on venture capital and helping companies actually develop and getting those startups. And this flows into the objective that the EU has to become more innovative and to have higher levels of innovation in Ireland and in other parts of Europe to actually achieve that ambition to be a really strongly competitive business community across the world.
Yeah, and that's vitally important, not just for the businesses that are already in the EU and that can benefit from a strong single market, but those businesses that are looking to invest here, and a stronger single market would certainly help on the investment front. You talked about services, and you touched a little bit on digital. The other key ask is to advocate for an EU that leads an inclusive and innovative digital decade. With AI dominating headlines and discussions around boardroom tables and privacy and data. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that and what you're looking for.
I think there's been a lot of new EU regulations introduced in this current Commission's term: the Digital Markets Act, Digital Services Act, the CHIPS Act, currently working on an AI Act. I think what we need now is a pause to say, look at how do we implement these decisions? How do we actually put them into place to actually support companies and support businesses to innovate? And like that too, we need to work with partners across the world. I mean, I mentioned earlier on that our largest trading partner outside of the EU is the United States. And here I think that there is a good opportunity for the EU and the US to actually work together in this technological space, to have rules which are shared and standards which are shared, and facilitate investment and trade between the US and the EU. And also to have that free-flowing data across borders, not only within the European Union, but also with trading partners who we can have a good relationship with and a good trusted trading relationship. So that kind of data flow and digital trade. I mean, the OECD has done work which shows that over 25% of trade today is actually digital trade. And I mean, we talk about how you support entrepreneurs, and it's proven that, you know, digital trade really does support a very broad spectrum of entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, SMEs, all benefit from the ability to do digital trade across borders.
Yeah, and we could have a whole session just on the digital front, and we'll bring in our colleague Eric Donovan at another time to go into a deeper dive on some of those areas. You know, the other thing that's been in part of many discussions is what's happening to sustainability and the Green Deal in the upcoming election, and you and the team and our businesses that are behind it are advocating for sustainability to be at the heart of prosperity. Maybe go into a little bit more detail on what you mean by that.
Yeah, the Green Deal has been a very significant focus of the current Commission. They have their Fit for 55 package, which sets out the details of actualising that ambition to reduce greenhouse gases by 55% in 2030 towards climate neutrality in 2050. And like business has done a lot of work with companies to identify how this can actually be achieved, and being committed to this greening of our economy and reaching that climate neutrality. I think now what we need to do is focus on how you implement again the rules that have been introduced. We've done a lot of work with our members here in Ireland in identifying, you know, how can we have a higher emphasis, for example, on electrification of vehicles here in Ireland. How do we address some of the climate challenges we have? How do we have a more circular economy and more redistribution of the products that we use, and recycling of the products that we use. So it's a hand-on-hand approach with government and business working together to come up with really effective policies which lead to better climate outcomes. And addressing climate change and improving the environment and social and governance standards are all part of that sustainability. And sustainability is really a big item now for boards of companies, for company strategies. And even when you look at trade, having sustainability chapters in trade agreements is also a part of life today. So I think that there is a lot of emphasis there. And despite some of the challenges, and we see, you know, protests on the agriculture side at the moment, we need to, I suppose, work with people and work with the different stakeholders and ensure that, you know, what's being asked of stakeholders is actually deliverable. And, you know, to share how we move from where we are today to where we need to be. So sustainability has to be at the heart of all our businesses.
Yeah, and when you think about, you know, you mentioned trade agreements and you know, if the EU is leading the way, whether it's on, you know, as part of the digital decade or part of or on sustainability, we've focused a lot on, you know, internally and inward looking, and the benefits to those that are already operating in the EU single market. But we need to make sure that the EU is clearly open for trade and investment. And of course, that's an area of specialty for you. So maybe talk a little bit about what you're looking the next commission to do on that front. And then you're also you also have the unique position of being the chair of the Business at OECD Trade Committee, obviously representing business at the OECD, and you're also actively engaged with the WTO and other international forums. So maybe tell me a little bit about that and what you're seeing in the long term in terms of, trends and what's happening in the area of trade and investment.
Yeah, again, I think trade and the ability to attract investment are among Ireland and the EU's most powerful assets. So it's very important in terms of looking at future economic growth and prosperity and competitiveness that we understand the role and the contribution of trade and foreign direct investment in that, both inward and outward foreign direct investment. So, Ireland benefits from being part of the European Union, and that enables us to participate and get advantage from EU free trade agreements. There's over 43 of those across the world. Very important partners. We have either economic partnerships or trade agreements with Canada, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, a whole range of countries right across the world, and recent ones that have been negotiated are, New Zealand, Kenya, Chile. So it really offers an opportunity for trade, which is important to take advantage of. I think the other thing which has come across in recent times is the challenge to the value of multilateralism and the WTO. And the WTO is having a ministerial meeting in Abu Dhabi this week. We have been very active in terms of engaging with the WTO, with the European Union as the representatives at the WTO and our own government officials here in Ireland. And we've highlighted that it's very important that the WTO continues to its rules-based system continues into the future, that we don't depart from the value of multilateralism. And this was one of the things which I highlighted on behalf of international business last week at the OECD. And that's to say that, look, we should work together to strengthen the rules and to ensure that the WTO continues to operate, and its system, such as its appeal system, also gets back on track. We can achieve quite a bit from bilateral agreements, also from plurilateral agreements. In the services area, for example, there's a very, very important discussion around services and domestic regulation on services at the WTO. Currently, also, it's very important to ensure that we don't introduce tariffs into the future, and that's one thing that it's important in terms of the current MC13. One of the items that's being considered there is extending or making permanent the moratorium on imposing customs duties on electronic transmissions. And it's very important that the WTO and the ministers who are attending that actually agree to either make it permanent or extend it for a further period. It would be really regrettable if the WTO actually introduced duties and tariffs on services trade when they've spent so many years removing tariffs on goods trade. So there is a lot there in terms of recognizing the value of the system we have currently and ensuring that goes on into the future.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. It really is building on a strong foundation and modernizing it to make it fit for purpose now and into the future, based on where global trade is going. What is being traded across borders, which is largely becoming services and digital focused.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a matter really, Jackie, of reforming the WTO and making it more up to date for trade in the 21st century. But it's not about you know, departing from the rules that govern. And a lot of the trade that the EU and that Ireland does across the world are based on WTO rules. For example, our trade with the United States and our trade with China are governed by WTO rules.
Yeah, and that's so important because it protects everybody.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Pat. This has been a very interesting and enlightening conversation. We will definitely share the link to the election documents and manifesto for those that want to go deeper into that, and we'll share those details. So thank you very much for taking the time today to speak with us, and we'll let you go off and save and change the world.
Thanks very much, Jackie.